Folks, for a special Q&A, please welcome back the co-writer of the film, Dan Klienman. Thank you, Dan. It's good to laugh. I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
But we'll keep it short. Let me start by asking you, how did this start for you? Where did the story come from, and how did you work? Did you and Samach come to work on this together?
Okay. He came to me. I need to clear my throat. Bless you.
I will note, of course, Kais Nashef in the leading role, who always plays a stoner, if you've ever seen him in any other roles. Fabulous job, and won the award for Best Actor at the Venice Film Festival, as I recall, which is one of the top world film festivals.
Well, Sammy and I have been friends since he was a student at Columbia, and I've followed his career. We kept in touch. In fact, he sent me every script that he wrote, and I gave him notes. And there was a Mexican film that was made by two of his classmates, or near classmates, who also I know. So I had seen the film, he had seen the film, and it has some similarities to this. And he came to me one day and said, "What do you think about taking that story and moving it to Israel?" I said, "That sounds interesting. It would fit. It would change the nature of it, but it would fit. Would you like to try writing it together?" And he said, let's see how that goes. And it went very well. So that's what we did. Now, I do want to say the writer of that Mexican film, Ricardo Hernandez, is my friend, is here in the audience.
Don't sue them. Don't sue them, please.
No, so that's how it began.
Now, it's such a local story on many levels. Obviously, I was saying before how universal it is, but there's also Palestinian-Israeli details that are very local. How did you familiarize yourself with all the flavors of the locals?
We talked about the story. I mean, we had the first decision we had to make. Well, one decision we made early in the Mexican film, it had to do with a man who is a writer for a Mexican soap opera. We said it's more interesting if our character is not a writer, he's a production assistant who eventually becomes a writer. So we made that change. But then we had to decide who is the good writer, the production assistant or the border guard. And our first thought was, let's make the border guard, he's full of dumb ideas, and the production assistant, but he loves the idea of the glamour, but his ideas are ridiculous. And we worked on that for a month or so, and then we said it's more interesting, it's more fun if the production assistant doesn't know a damn thing, and the border guard has the ideas. So that's the level at which we were working. We were working at the level of plot. In general, I have some relatives in Israel, but I hadn't spent a lot of time there. I just assumed that he would correct me if I went astray. And occasionally I would write something and he would say, "No, that's culturally wrong." And of course that was the end of that. I wouldn't argue with him. So he kept it straight, and he was the resource.
Anytime there was an artistic decision that he didn't like, he would just say it's culturally wrong, and then
that's right. Well, he didn't say it that often, but yes, I remember we had one argument about a line of dialogue. It didn't happen that often, but we were split over a line of dialogue. He said, "Okay, I'll leave it your way. I'm doing the translation."
So now I'm going to ask a serious question, which has been something that's come up before, and it's something that's come up since I saw this film. A comedy about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, in some ways. One could say this is just a comedy. Too soon? Are we ready for this? Is this something that some could say this is a serious topic, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? Was this something that was discussed and considered, and how was it resolved?
Well, as it happens, 4 days ago, the picture opened in Israel. So, I could even go further back than that. In last September, shortly after the Venice Film Festival, the picture was shown at the Haifa Film Festival. The audience was half Arab, half Jewish. 400 people, more or less evenly split. And they all loved it. It was interesting to hear the laughs because I could sense that some laughs were from one part of the room and some laughs were from another. But both sides, the applause at the end was wonderful. It was similar to this, and thank you very much. I thought it was fine, and Sammy thought it was fine. And what I want to say is, I've been reading all the reviews from Israel. People send me the link. I stick it into Google Translate. And the reviews all say things like, this is surprising to do this. It's hard to bring it off, but they do it. So apparently it's okay.
I do recommend that people who have relatives and friends in Israel, it's playing there now. Tell them to see it, because if films like this succeed, more will be made, and we want to see films like this. Now I'm going to get into one more political question, if you don't mind. I'm trying to understand the metaphor at the end. So if this is in any way speaking in metaphors, they're sitting down, they're over hummus, and he says to him, this didn't work in 1967, it's not going to work now. And I felt he was not just talking about the TV show, obviously, but actually making a statement about the political situation. And then says, I have a new solution. And I was like, the solution. And then they're standing at the wedding, and I did not get the end. They're standing at the wedding. What is the solution? What can work?
I don't think this film is proposing the way out of the conflict.
If they have any solutions, good. I mean, I would leave it to the writers to figure it out for the Palestinian and Israeli conflict.
Yeah, if there's a bottom line political statement, it is that, for me, the key line is, why is there nothing between bombs and surrender? And that's really the political statement as far as I'm concerned. But we don't propose the solution.
So the solution is not cast all the Israeli generals in major roles in Palestinian soap operas.
No, that's...
Because I heard that's actually what Trump was proposing. I would like to take a couple of serious questions from the audience, please. If anybody has any questions, comments, thoughts.
Or frivolous questions, I'll take those too.
Yeah, we'll take them.
Wait.
Let's give you a microphone. We have a microphone for you, so everyone can hear. When is it coming out in the United States? Is that what you... Sorry.
Simple.
August 2nd.
That's the most important question. Spread the word. If films like this... if you want to continue seeing films like this in the United States, they need to succeed. Cohen Media is the distributor again.
Thank you so much. It's a small, trivial little point, but it is somewhat significant, where he was saying that this Romeo and Juliet, it didn't work in 67, and it wouldn't work now. When in reality, much has been made of the fact that in the past 15, 20 years, there's an astronomical increase in Palestinian-Israeli marriages, and many of them are working successfully, so it's becoming almost commonplace. So I was wondering if you had taken that into account. Maybe not commonplace, but it's increasing. astronomically.
A small minority that might be growing more in, but I would not say astronomical.
That kind of question really was Sammy's domain. I didn't question him on that sort of thing.
We have a question. Oh.
You passed down the mic. Sorry.
Great film, great writing. In every film like this, I always find that there's scenes that you've probably written that ended up on the cutting room floor and didn't make it. Is there anything that you could share that, ideas that you had that for whatever reason didn't make it, and what would have been your favorite thing to squeeze in that didn't get it?
I would love to answer that question. Well, first of all,
Things that weren't culturally accurate.
A month before we were shooting, most of this, by the way, was shot in Luxembourg because that's where we got most of our funds from. So all the TV studios, we just rented a TV studio in Luxembourg.
Are there many TV studios in Luxembourg? I know it's a small country.
Well, there's at least one, and we rented it.
Yeah, my guess.
So a month before shooting, Sammy was doing pre-production in Luxembourg, and he called me up and he said, our favorite scene, we can't afford it. We have to cut it. So I'll tell you what that scene was. Early in the picture, Salam, Tala says to Salam, I need a ride to Jerusalem. And he says, well, I'll take you. So she's in the car with him when he's going to the checkpoint and into Jerusalem. And it's because he's with her that he says out the window, she says, are you sure about that line of dialogue? And he says, I'll show you. So he says this. And then they go to, what's the name of this hotel? There's the American Hotel, I think it is.
American Colony Hotel.
American Colony, yes. Because she's expecting to meet a producer there, but the producer is late. So she says, will you keep me company? And he walks with this big star into the American Colony Hotel and sits there basking at everyone looking at him. And it was a lovely scene. It was fabulous. One of our favorite scenes that he said, you have to cut it. It happens that day, my wife and I were on a train to Buffalo. It's an 8-hour ride up to Buffalo. I spent the entire ride typing, talking to Sammy in Luxembourg, and figuring out the substitute. That's when we wrote the selfie scene, because we wanted some semblance of Tala in the car. So he says, can I take a selfie with you? But we lost that wonderful scene in the hotel. And there's one line of dialogue I want to tell you about because I miss it every time. The scene in the church was meant to end. The producer says, it's no time for Romeo and Juliet. It's time for the Maltese Falcon. And Sammy cut that line. He regrets it, I think, a little bit. I complained about that, but he said, really, the Maltese Falcon doesn't mean much in Palestine, so that's reasonable.
We're going to take one last question down here.
You said that you had aired it in Haifa,
Yes.
and it was a split audience. Have you explored the possibility, and is it even possible to show this in places like Jenin and Ramallah and places like that?
It's not easy. If that were to happen, I think it would be fabulous. But the basic problem is that there's Israeli money behind the film. And so as a matter of just the policy of those regions is anything with Israeli money behind it is forbidden. I would love for them somehow to make an exception if they decided to do that. And I'm sure Sammy would love that too. But that's the reality. I do want to say that the reception has been very good, except for extremists on both sides. the extreme on one side says it's too pro-Palestinian, and the extremists on the other side say it's too pro-Israeli. And in a sense, that's what the picture is about.
Dan, thank you so much. Thank you for this beautiful film. Thank you for being here. This film opens early August. Avi Nesher's film opens early July. I'll also mention Back to the Fatherland, which we screened here. The filmmakers are here with us tonight, and that opens this weekend here in New York at Cinema Village, so please check that out as well. Help spread the word. See good films. Thank you, folks, for joining us. And the after party is at Miznon on 72nd Street. Bring your tickets for a free beer. Thank you very much, and have a good night.